So yeah, my grandma was fierce. She was actually, our familia, I was from here since time immemorial, but she was born in Clayton, of all places. So as I looked into it, I was like, why was she born in Clayton? And then, I did all kinds of research, and especially because like my cousin Andres Vargas wrote this book about Cañon and about his mom. And it turns out, we're coming from some serious shepherds, sheep herding traditions. So we used to herd our own sheep in our land grants, but then our land grants were stolen. And we started working for the big sheep operations. So that's how my uncle and specifically now my great grandfather Gavino Vargas, was running big sheep in the plains by Clayton. So my grandma was born out there. Then eventually they came back to Taos. My grandma was the youngest of 12 children. There was actually 14. But 2 of them were given up because back in those days, some families had kids and other families couldn't have children. And so, that kind of thing went on. So I always wondered, how did a Chicano like me end up with a cousin named Graham? And then I found out, that my tío Miguel Antonio, who I'm actually named after, I wasn't named after him, it was just a really weird coincidence. But, my tío Mike ended up with the Grahams. And, but my grandma was the youngest. And my grandpa Gavino, great grandpa, was always on the bodega, herding sheep either out in the plains or up in Montana. And left my grandma and all the kids alone with my great grandma Adelina. And my grandma, they were often alone. And then tragically, my grandma was about to graduate from high school, and her mother died. And it was a big deal. My grandma always talked about it, how she always wanted her mom to be at the graduation. And then her mom died, and her dad was out on the bodega, and it was hard to get information. So my grandma, had to figure all this out. And then she talks about this nice lady who actually bought my grandma a dress and shoes for her graduation. And my grandma graduated, and she would talk about how she spent many nights in terror with her next older brother, my tío Martin, which if you're from here, he owned Los Compadres. He was a restaurant guy, and she would talk. She loved her brothers. Her brothers could do nothing wrong because her brothers were there for her when her mom was gone, and then her dad was also gone, but her mom was like really gone. But, so that's the kind of grandma that she was. She was really independent, and then she even went to college. She got a degree in education. And in those days, women didn't do that. So my grandma was educated, very self-sufficient, very professional. She even went to Highlands. My mom would talk about going to Highlands University, with my grandma as a young child. And my grandma was going for her master's. I don't think she ever got it. But because of that, my mom got a master's. And I was going to give up at a bachelor's, but my mom wouldn't let me because she said, your grandma got a master's. I got a master's. What makes you think you're done with education? So I had to go get a master's too, at least. But, so yeah, that's how deep education ran in our family. My grandma was a teacher for 40 years. In this community. Some people here, a lot of people, thank you, a lot of people know me because of my grandma. As soon as I mention my grandma, Simonita Trujillo, they go, oh, she was my teacher. Yeah. She was mean. But, she taught. She taught us, and, we learned, and I named my daughter after her. My grandma Simonita. And she was fierce.